For most of human history, reality was something solid, something we believed we could touch, measure, and trust. But today, as we stand at the crossroads of technology, psychology, and our own fragile imagination, we are witnessing a profound transformation. Reality is no longer a fixed landscape, it is becoming a fluid story, constantly edited, rewritten, and re-experienced. We live in a time where algorithms can predict our desires before we feel them, where stories spread faster than truth, and where our inner world is often more powerful than the external one. This shifting reality is not a threat. It is an invitation to reclaim authorship of our own narratives, to navigate uncertainty with courage, and to recognize that the most powerful reality is the one we choose to create. Today, I want to explore with you not just how reality is shifting, but how we can shift with it, consciously, intentionally, and with the kind of clarity that transforms chaos into opportunity. For most of human history, we assumed the world was stable. The ground beneath our feet felt solid. The sky above seemed eternal, and the laws governing life appeared consistent enough for us to build cultures, beliefs, and identities around them. Reality felt like something we inherited, not something we constructed. It was a pre-existing stage on which we performed our roles, rarely stopping to ask who built the stage, or whether it could be rebuilt. Today, we find ourselves living in a moment where that old certainty is dissolving, not violently, but subtly, like fog lifting, to reveal a landscape far more complex than we imagined. Reality is no longer fixed. It is becoming a dynamic story, one that we are constantly rewriting, often without realizing it. This shift did not happen overnight. It emerged gradually, like a slow changing tide, shaped by our expanding knowledge, our technological capabilities, and our growing understanding of the human mind. As individuals, we have always lived in slightly different realities, shaped by our memories, beliefs, and cultural backgrounds. But now, those small personal variations have expanded dramatically. Our tools amplify them, our networks reinforce them, and our imaginations fill in the gaps. The result is a world where reality feels less like a shared space and more like a mosaic of overlapping yet distinct experiences. What makes this moment extraordinary is not that reality is shifting. Reality has always shifted. What is extraordinary is the speed, scale, and visibility of the shift. For the first time, we can watch in real time as collective beliefs transform, as facts bend under the pressure of stories, and as identities reshape themselves with each new piece of information. The boundary between what is real and what is imagined has become thin, permeable, and flexible. This new world is not inherently better or worse, it is simply different. And to thrive in it, we must learn to understand how reality is formed, who influences it, and how we can navigate it with clarity. Human beings do not experience the world as it is. We experience it as we interpret it. Our senses deliver fragments, light, sound, texture, and our brains weave them into something coherent enough to act upon. This process creates a useful illusion that the world we perceive is objective, stable, and shared by everyone. Yet neuroscience, psychology, and even simple observation reveal the truth. Reality is a cognitive construction. It is built inside us, shaped by countless internal and external factors. When those factors change, our reality changes with them. And today, nearly every factor is changing. Consider how much of our experience of the world now arrives through screens rather than direct interaction. The stories we absorb, the images we see, the conversations we have, and the identities we explore, all are filtered, edited, and curated by systems designed to hold our attention. These systems don't just show us the world, they shape our expectations of it. They form patterns in our thinking, highlighting what seems important and obscuring what seems irrelevant. In this environment, reality becomes malleable because our perception becomes malleable. The more we rely on mediated experiences, the more our internal world begins to diverge from the external one. But this shift is not only technological, it is psychological. Modern life encourages constant reinvention. A person can adopt new beliefs, new identities, new communities, and new philosophies at a pace unimaginable in previous centuries. This freedom is empowering, but it also means that our sense of self, and therefore our sense of reality, has become more fluid. When who we are can change rapidly, what we believe, how we interpret events, and how we define truth can also change rapidly. We are no longer anchored to a single narrative about ourselves. Instead, we float among many possible narratives, choosing and discarding them as circumstances shift. This creates both opportunity and vulnerability. When reality becomes a story, those who tell the most compelling stories wield enormous influence. This is not manipulation in the crude sense, it is simply the human condition. We understand the world through narratives, through meaning, through interpretation. When realities shift, stories that once grounded us must be re-examined. Some dissolve, others grow stronger. And in this process, individuals often find themselves caught between competing versions of the truth, unsure which world they belong to. Yet, this uncertainty does not have to be paralyzing. In fact, it can be liberating. When reality shifts, it creates space for new possibilities. Old limits fade, old assumptions crumble, and new paths become visible. The key is not to resist the shifting, but to learn how to remain centered within it. To understand that while the external world changes, our internal capacity to interpret it can remain stable if we cultivate awareness. The power lies not in controlling reality, but in understanding how reality works. One of the most important insights of our time is that reality is co-constructed. It arises from the interaction between individual minds and collective systems. No single person controls it, yet every person influences it. When millions of people shift their beliefs, adopt new habits, or embrace new values, the world itself changes, sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly. We are witnessing this on a scale that would have seemed impossible just a few decades ago. Ideas spread faster than physical objects. Movements form in hours. Narratives reshape societies before institutions can respond. We used to believe that reality was built by those with power. Now we see that power itself is built by the stories people believe. This creates a paradox. Reality feels more fragile, yet it is also more open. It feels more confusing, yet also more full of potential. The future is not predetermined because the present is not fixed. Every moment contains multiple possible realities, and the one that becomes real is the one we collectively reinforce. This is not magic. It is psychology, sociology, and technology interacting simultaneously. It is the recognition that human beings are both observers and creators of the world they inhabit. Understanding this gives us a new kind of responsibility. If reality is shifting, then our choices matter more than ever. Not just the grand choices, but the small ones. What we pay attention to, which stories we accept, which narratives we question, which habits we cultivate, and which values we embody. These choices ripple outward, shaping the collective reality in ways we often do not see. We influence one another constantly, not only through direct communication, but through the energy we bring into our environments. Reality emerges from these interactions, from the countless invisible threads that connect us. The challenge is that our brains evolved for a world where reality changed slowly. Our instincts expect stability. We crave certainty. We look for patterns even when they do not exist. When faced with rapid change, our first response is often fear or resistance. But fear narrows perception, and resistance slows adaptation. To navigate a shifting reality, we must train ourselves to expand rather than contract, to remain curious rather than defensive. Curiosity is the antidote to confusion. It allows us to explore new possibilities without being overwhelmed by them. It helps us see opportunities where others see threats. In a world where reality is fluid, clarity becomes a superpower. Not clarity in the sense of rigid belief, but clarity in the sense of awareness. Awareness of our own mental processes, of the narratives influencing us, of the systems shaping our perceptions. This kind of clarity requires introspection, patience, and a willingness to question even our most cherished assumptions. It requires us to hold our beliefs lightly, understanding that they are tools, not absolutes. When reality shifts, the tools that served us yesterday may no longer serve us today. Another important dimension of this shift is identity. For centuries, identity was tied to fixed roles, fixed beliefs, fixed communities. Today, identity is more fluid, more open to exploration. This allows individuals to evolve in ways that were previously restricted. But it also means that we must learn to navigate ourselves with greater nuance. If we do not understand who we are beneath our changing roles and beliefs, we risk becoming lost in a sea of possibilities. The challenge is not to find a single unchanging identity, but to build a stable center from which we can safely explore many identities without losing ourselves. This stability does not come from clinging to old realities. It comes from cultivating inner coherence. When our values, intentions, and actions align, we create a sense of internal stability that remains strong even when the external world shifts. This inner coherence allows us to adapt without losing our sense of direction. It becomes our anchor in a world without anchors. And from this anchor, we can engage with reality not as victims of change, but as participants in its creation. One of the most profound implications of a shifting reality is the realization that truth itself is layered. There is empirical truth, the kind measured by science. There is narrative truth, the kind created by stories. There is subjective truth, the kind shaped by individual experience. And there is cultural truth, the kind upheld by collective agreement. These layers interact constantly, forming a complex tapestry that we often confuse for a single unified truth. When we understand the layers, we become better equipped to navigate them. We stop expecting the world to fit neatly into one dimension. We learn to operate with nuance, humility, and curiosity. As reality shifts, the boundaries between the possible and the impossible also shift. What once seemed unthinkable becomes normal. What once seemed permanent becomes temporary. What once seemed predictable becomes uncertain. This uncertainty can be uncomfortable, but it also means that transformation is always possible. We are not trapped by the stories of the past. We are free to imagine and create new futures. This freedom is both empowering and terrifying. It demands that we take responsibility for the worlds we create inside ourselves, because those internal worlds inevitably influence the external one. When we embrace the fluidity of reality, we become more adaptable. We learn to let go of rigid expectations. We learn to observe rather than react. We learn to shape our inner world intentionally, rather than allowing external forces to shape it for us. This is not about rejecting the concept of reality. It is about understanding that reality is a collaboration between what exists and how we interpret what exists. It is a dance between the world outside and the world inside. Even the concept of time feels different in a shifting reality. The past is no longer fixed because our memories reinterpret it. The future is no longer distant because our choices accelerate it. And the present is no longer stable because information changes it moment by moment. Learning to anchor ourselves in the present becomes essential, not by clinging to it, but by fully experiencing it. Presence becomes a skill, a practice, a form of mental grounding that helps us navigate uncertainty with grace. This shifting reality invites us to ask deeper questions. What do we truly value? What kind of world do we want to participate in creating? How do we distinguish between noise and meaning? How do we build resilience in a world where the ground is always moving? These questions do not have simple answers, but asking them is what prepares us for the future. It is in the act of questioning, reflecting, and choosing that we regain our sense of agency. In this new landscape, the greatest danger is not that reality is shifting, but that we remain unaware of how it shifts. When we assume the world is fixed, we become vulnerable to forces that reshape it without our consent. But when we recognize the fluidity of reality, we can begin to navigate it with intention. We can choose the narratives that empower us. We can build inner strength that does not depend on external stability, and we can face uncertain. Thank you, not with fear, but with clarity. The shift in reality is not a warning. It is an invitation to understand ourselves more deeply, to observe the world more carefully, and to participate more consciously in the creation of meaning. It is a reminder that while we cannot control the changing landscape, we can control the lens through which we see it. The shift in reality is accelerating because our tools are evolving faster than our ability to interpret them. This simple observation defines much of the confusion, excitement, and instability we experience today. For centuries, technological change moved slowly enough for human psychology, culture, and institutions to adapt. Generations had time to learn the new rules, integrate new skills, and reshape their understanding of the world gradually. But now the pace has reversed. New tools reshape the landscape before we have processed the meaning of the previous ones. The result is that our perception struggles to keep up, not because we are incapable, but because we are still operating with cognitive machinery evolved for a slower world. When we look around, we see evidence of this acceleration everywhere. There was a time when new inventions entered society with clear instructions, predictable uses, and limited influence. The printing press spread ideas but did not rewrite identities in an afternoon. The steam engine changed economies but did not transform emotional patterns. Even electricity, despite its revolutionary power, took decades to reshape daily life. But today's tools behave differently. They do not just provide new abilities, they alter the very structure of perception. They amplify certain emotions, shorten attention spans, intensify desires, concentrate influence, and reshape what we consider meaningful, often before we consciously realize that a shift has occurred. This creates a world in which the story of reality updates faster than our understanding of reality. We are constantly catching up to interpretations we did not choose, narratives we did not construct, and environments that mutate as soon as we begin to grasp them. Our tools are no longer static instruments, they are dynamic forces evolving through algorithms, networks, and feedback loops. They learn from our behavior, adapt to our patterns, and alter our mental landscapes accordingly. The challenge is not that these tools exist, the challenge is that human culture and human psychology still operate on slower cycles of adaptation, reflection, and meaning-making. This gap creates uncertainty. When the environment changes faster than our mental models, we feel disoriented. We search for stable ground, but the moment we find it, another shift occurs. This is not evidence of weakness. It is simply the mismatch between biological evolution and technological acceleration. Our ancestors adapted over thousands of years to conditions that changed gradually. Today, we must adapt to global transformations that occur in months or even days. This speed is a new phenomenon in human history, and it reshapes the entire experience of being alive. One of the most profound aspects of this acceleration is that our tools influence us not only outwardly through actions, but inwardly through cognition. Digital interfaces do not merely display information, they structure how we encounter information. Algorithms do not merely recommend content, they shape what we perceive as normal, common, desirable, threatening, or meaningful. These invisible design choices filter our reality, creating personal worlds that differ from one individual to another. As the tools evolve, these personal worlds shift rapidly, sometimes daily. We are all living in subtly different versions of the world, and these versions diverge more with each technological advancement. This divergence affects how communities form, how ideas spread, and how individuals understand themselves. The accelerating tools create environments where multiple realities coexist and collide. People experience the same event, not as a shared fact, but as a personalized narrative filtered through the lens of their digital environment. When the tools interpret reality faster than we can, they begin to define meaning before we have the chance to question it. This is not malicious, it is simply the consequence of speed. Interpretation, once a human responsibility, now often begins with systems that prioritize engagement, novelty, or emotional intensity. We react to interpretations rather than forming them. This dynamic makes it difficult to maintain a coherent sense of what is happening in the world. When information seek less move faster than reflection cycles, meaning becomes unstable. The world starts to feel unpredictable not because events themselves are more chaotic, but because our tools reveal, frame, and amplify events in ways that outpace our emotional and cognitive integration. The result is a widespread sense of overwhelm, a sense that reality itself is unstable. Yet the instability is not in the physical world, it is in the speed of interpretation. This acceleration extends beyond information. It affects work, identity, relationships, and the structure of value. Jobs evolve faster than workers can retrain. Skill sets become outdated rapidly. Social norms shift before cultural conversations can reach their conclusions. Even personal identity becomes fluid, shaped by tools that allow continuous reinvention. In previous eras, identity was anchored by long-term social roles and slow cultural cycles. Today, identity can transform through a single viral moment, a surge of online validation, or a sudden narrative shift. Our tools have given us unprecedented freedom of self-expression, but they have also accelerated the timelines of identity formation, sometimes faster than individuals can process. Another aspect of this acceleration is the shift in how human attention is distributed. Attention is one of the most fundamental elements in defining reality. What we pay attention to becomes real to us. What we ignore fades into the background. New tools compete relentlessly for attention, gaining increasingly sophisticated methods to capture and hold it. As the tools evolve, they restructure our internal priorities. We may start focusing more on immediacy than depth, on stimulation rather than reflection, on reaction rather than contemplation. This reshaping of attention is not trivial. It influences the architecture of reality itself, because reality is constructed from what the mind chooses to engage with. Our tools also accelerate emotional experiences. In earlier eras, emotions unfolded gradually through face-to-face interactions, physical environments, and personal relationships. Today, emotional triggers can be delivered instantly, globally, and repeatedly. A single message, image, or notification can alter mood within seconds. Emotional cycles that once played out over weeks can now rise and fall within hours. This acceleration compresses the time available for emotional regulation. People find themselves responding quickly, sometimes automatically, before consciously understanding their reactions. The tools interpret emotional preferences, reinforce emotional patterns, and amplify certain emotional states. Over time, these accelerated emotional cycles influence how individuals perceive reality itself. As our tools evolve, they also transform the nature of truth. In the past, truth emerged from slow processes, investigation, debate, consensus. Facts were established through methods requiring time and patience. Today, the perception of truth can shift rapidly. The lie, driven by trends, virality, and immediacy. This does not mean truth has disappeared. It means that the process of establishing truth competes with the speed of narrative formation. Narratives spread faster than verification. And once a narrative takes hold, it can anchor itself in the minds of millions before truth has the chance to catch up. This creates environments where perception often precedes confirmation and where stories shape reality before analysis shapes understanding. This gap between technological evolution and human interpretation has implications for personal autonomy. When tools respond to us faster than we can reflect on ourselves, our behavior becomes entwined with systems that anticipate and shape our preferences. We experience this as convenience, efficiency, or personalization, but beneath these benefits lies a shifting dynamic of influence. Our choices are increasingly embedded in environments we did not design and cannot fully comprehend at the speed they operate. This does not mean we are losing control. It means we must cultivate new forms of awareness to navigate environments that evolve too quickly for instinctive understanding. As tools accelerate, they also amplify human strengths and weaknesses. They amplify creativity, giving individuals the ability to produce, share, and collaborate at unprecedented scales. But they also amplify impulses, impatience, distraction, comparison, tribalism. The accelerating world stretches our emotional bandwidth, DTH, often pushing us beyond familiar limits. Some respond with adaptability, others with overwhelm, and many with a mix of both. The diversity of responses reveals the human challenge to evolve our inner capacities at a pace that can match the outer acceleration. The rapid evolution of tools also changes how we build meaning. Meaning was once constructed slowly through rituals, traditions, stories, and shared experiences. Now meaning is often constructed through global events, digital communities, and rapid cycles of attention. This new environment challenges the stability of meaning because the foundation upon which meaning is built shifts constantly. People search for deeper anchors, yet the world offers an abundance of shallow ones. The abundance itself becomes a challenge. When everything is accessible instantly, significance becomes harder to discern. Meaning requires time, contemplation, and repetition. But our tools increasingly push us towards speed, novelty, and constant stimulation. This acceleration impacts decisions as well. Decisions that once required weeks now demand answers within hours. Opportunities appear and vanish rapidly. Predictions become unreliable because the conditions they were based on evolve before the predictions mature. Individuals and institutions alike face environments where long-term planning becomes difficult. This creates a sense of unpredictability, but beneath it lies a deeper truth. We are learning to make decisions in a world where the ground moves beneath our feet. This is not a loss, it is an adaptation. But adaptation requires new mental frameworks, new habits of thought, and new emotional resilience. As reality shifts faster, the ability to pause becomes more valuable. The ability to reflect, to step back from the stream of accelerated information, becomes essential for clarity. Tools may accelerate external change, but internal clarity cannot be rushed. It must be cultivated intentionally. In a world that moves quickly, the capacity to slow down internally becomes a form of wisdom. It allows individuals to interpret change consciously rather than reactively. It restores a sense of agency in environments that often feel overwhelming. The acceleration of tools also reshapes human connection. Relationships once built on physical presence and long-term familiarity now often form through digital interactions that evolve at high speed. Connections can be created instantly, but they can also dissolve instantly. the rhythms of connection become less predictable. This fluidity changes how people experience intimacy, trust, and belonging. Some find new forms of connection that feel more authentic than anything they have known before. Others feel the fragility of connections that shift too quickly to root themselves deeply. The tools have expanded the possibilities of connection, but they have also complicated its stability. At a societal level, accelerating tools challenge the structures that govern community. Institutions built for slower eras struggle to adapt. Policies lag behind technological realities. Cultural norms transform faster than guidelines can be established. The world begins to feel uncoordinated, not because anything is fundamentally broken, but because the rhythm of change has outpaced the rhythm of governance, communication, and consensus building. This is not a failure, it is a mismatch of